All right. Hey everyone, it's Arfan. I'm back with another episode of the Successful Lead Generating Coaches Show. I am here with Elizabeth Grandinetti. I said your last name correct, Elizabeth?
You did. You did great.
Awesome. I'm proud of myself. My tour in Italy paid off. I'm good with Italian last names. So I am super excited. We got connected a few weeks ago, and one thing I noticed about Elizabeth, her energy was off the charts, and it was a great vibe. And I said, you know what? I think you'd be a great guest to have on my show because often, as new coaches or even established coaches, as we go through the journey of learning, of wanting to market. We can go through the entire rigmarole of just creating more content, posting more, trying to figure out algorithm and trying to be ahead of it and trying to outsmart it, which never works. And even using Claude or ChatGPT or something to start producing content, and eventually things aren't sounding like us, and it starts to go away. And it's like we're an expert. You're an expert. You listen to this right now. I guarantee you're an expert at the topic you are, just like Elizabeth is, just like I am. And when I sat with her, I was like, wow, she really knows the game of podcasting. So we're talking today about barred audience, bigger opportunities, and how podcast guesting can grow your business and your confidence. And Elizabeth, I'm gonna put it over to you in a second here, but I want to give you a quick introduction, and I want to toss it over to you, right? So again,
Thank
I
you.
mentioned Elizabeth, and she is, from my understanding, unless I'm missing something, you're an entrepreneur, right?
Hmm.
A coach and a podcaster, and you primarily help business owners learn how to use conversations to build authority, grow their audience, and just create more meaningful opportunities in the entire space they're in. Is that right?
That sounds like it. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm having a blast. But yeah, I think our conversations are so much powerful than we even realize sometimes. And it's really cool because I can save a lot of time just having a conversation with someone. And it's around like the content and things like that too. I mean, I think the deeper we go with conversations and the more people we put ourselves around who are doing the things and doing all there's so much to learn there that we know, but how can we make those conversations work for us after we have them? And that's something I've
Mhm.
become super passionate about as I've taken this journey in my own business.
I love that because there's a saying that one conversation can change your life. I mean, one conversation can change the trajectory of your life. And I've seen that over and over. And the reason we say this is because, I'm in the advertising space and we do a lot of online webinars and master classes, and we treat those sometimes as a conversation. Similarly, as a podcast guest, you are having that conversation too, and that can really change the trajectory. When I first started, I remember one of my first time podcast guesting. I was on a guest and I did the whole thing. And then someone booked a call and it shows like, where'd you hear me from? And they mentioned the podcast and I was like, oh, well, that was awesome. I just and doing the conversation, it was like my second time being a guest on a podcast. Didn't even do it to think that I was gonna get a client or anything like that. I just did it because I wanted to share and just even better my own ability of communicating what I do. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. So in addition to everything I mentioned, Elizabeth also she's the creator of Pod Ready, which we'll talk more about a little bit in a bit. And she's the co-host of the Bitchin' and Boozin' podcast, which you guys at the end of this conversation you're gonna look it up, you're gonna subscribe. She will give you the link and everything like that because you're gonna want to add this to your podcast arsenal. If for some reason you probably already don't have it, you will get that there, right? So I'm gonna start diving in, and I want to start off, Elizabeth, with just let's start with your own story, right? And you can go to the beginning or wherever you want, but how did podcasting and being a guest on podcasts change the way that you communicated about your business?
Oh my goodness. So this would be a really long story. I'm gonna cut to like where I have been podcasting for over a year now. I started my podcast with my really great friend, Bitchin' and Boozin'. We started it a little over a year ago, and it started, and the name even came from a group of girls when we were all single back in the day. We used to hang out, just our besties. We had our little tribe, and we'd get
Hmm.
together and we'd cook together. We'd have wine, we'd hang out, we'd have amazing conversations, and it's just really built built on that like love for connection. And one of our friends coined it one time as we were doing that, bitching and boozing. So I just kind of want to give that background about what that's all about, just so you get an idea. But it's truly connecting and it's very relatable. So we just like to have a good time, have a glass of wine, have a cocktail, get together and chat. And I've been doing that for a long time. It's something I get super excited to do. I love it. I love it. I'm energized by these podcasts, getting to hop on and have a conversation, like I said. But I think there was this really big aha because I've always loved having conversations. I am that friend that people would get like either really excited to come over for dinner or extremely nervous because I keep conversation cards on my dining room table. If there's not enough conversation happening, those cards come out. We start talking about things that matter. I really want to get to know people on a deep level. And so this is something that I've been doing pretty much my whole life, right? And then entered the podcast of bitching and boozing, having so much fun with that, realizing how relatable material, I'll call it, brings people to you. So I have so many people that will like, that are good friends of mine or just find me on the internet and will text message me and be like, I didn't know you could spit your gum out of the passenger side window because it's something I talked about doing on my podcast, you know? And so then it's just like it was almost like the clogs of a wheel, you know, like coming together. You kind of like see these things happening in different ways and in different places. And I'm like, if people are reaching out to me while I'm over here doing this thing that brings me a ton of joy and literally just lights me up, it's very easy for me to do. Um, I could be using this in my business. And I think that's when the light bulb went off, right? And so it's been an extremely fun journey, but I also saw a lot of transformation in myself. So at the beginning of the year, because I was having so much fun on my own podcast, I challenged myself to go on 100 podcasts this year. And that was when I really started to see a huge shift in myself and in the stories that I kept telling, the things that I would talk about most around my business, the transformation that happens in coaching, all of that fun stuff. And I was like, this is something incredible. Like I really need to share this more with people in my community because I have a few where we're all talking about, you know, visibility, growth, how to market. And like you mentioned before, like as coaches, you know, we enter this world and we think, oh, we just have to go start posting and things will start magically happening. And when it doesn't happen that way, we're kind of crushed. You're like, well, what do I do? You know, I was told the world needed me and I'm here and nothing's happening, right? And so a lot of us get really creative or we quit. And I've just seen this change me. I've seen it change how I approach my business. I've seen it change how my confidence has increased so much. And I want
Yes.
to share that with the world because you do have something meaningful to say. There is a reason why you are feeling called to do the work that you're doing. And just because social media isn't picking it up and running with it and all the engagement that you thought would come doesn't mean that that calling goes away.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of coaches I know, not a lot, almost every one of them didn't start a coaching business or became a coach because they wanted to just, you know, get a salary or anything like that. They really became a coach because they have something valuable, a life experience that they themselves went through, and they want to help others to avoid that pain, avoid that mistake, everything like that. And you know, I think too, one of the biggest things too is a lot of entrepreneurs are just kind of getting exhausted from constantly creating content for social media. And
Yes.
especially if they're just like, hey, I came to be a life coach, not a social media
Yeah.
platform
Expert.
person.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's been one of the biggest and coolest things that's come out of podcast guesting and getting to speak. It's so much more than that, and that's a big part of what we do in Pod Ready too. Is show you how to use those conversations like we're having right now, to create content so that you are having the conversation. You're borrowing an audience. You're getting authority on a topic that you already know so much about. You're the expert, And people are starting to hear that, right? And then you use that conversation to work for you so that you can save yourself some time from sitting down in front of a screen and not having a clue what to start talking about in your content because you've already had the conversation. It's already happened. Like now you can just use that to create. And
Yeah.
life gets so much easier when we use it that way.
And I love it too because it's just an interesting alternative to versus trying to always build your own audience from scratch by hoping that a single reel or a single post or something will just hit the right hashtag or the right place in the algorithm. So just from your perspective, right, as you're talking about this for entrepreneurs, like what makes like someone doing podcast guesting or having or being ready for that, um, like having a borrowed audience different from simply just posting another reel or creating another piece of content that hope marketing? Like what makes this so different?
Oh man, I love this question. Um, there are so many things that work in our favor, right? When you post on Facebook, if you post on LinkedIn, Instagram, even TikTok, all of those posts have a shelf life. And you used to be able to like go live and record a video, and now they've made it really complicated. They delete them if you don't download them. You have to get in there on time. You have to repost it all the time. There's just a lot of changes that have come around that. So what happens with podcasting is you go on a show, it can be distributed to any outlet, Spotify, Apple, some of them are on YouTube. These are evergreen resources that you're building. These are assets in your arsenal now. They're not just posts that are going to go out and depending on engagement, maybe 1% to 2% of the people who you're posting to actually get to see it. You can use those, and I'm not saying that that podcasting replaces any of that. It's definitely going to be a big tool though in what you use to create the content so that you can be consistent in that same space, but not rely on solely posting to social media to get the word out for your business. And so that's the biggest piece of it. And like you said, like the borrowing audiences, I mean, I think having conversations in general are so profound because we get to hear what it is that we love, right? What lights us up. And this is the coach in me, right? So there's a huge bit of that is the confidence that we need to go out and talk. And I think there's such a disconnect sometimes, especially when we're just starting out as coaches, because we're not getting the clients that we thought we would get right off the bat, right? And so we're not getting to have those conversations. So the podcast does so much around that because we get to talk about why we started doing this work to begin with, the thing that we're most passionate about. We get to share that with a host. We get to share that with their audience and people. That's the authority that we're building in that. So podcast
Mhm.
guesting is spectacular in my book because you get to add that evergreen piece of content that now you can go post on social media. Hey, I was on this podcast, give it a listen. And it's a win win. It's not just for you. You get to help promote someone else's podcast, highlight them, talk about them, share about what they do too and what they're about. And it's a win win for everybody. I just love that. I think that's why I get so excited about this too, is because it's not one sided. It really is very community building and growth
Yeah.
oriented.
See, I love all that. And you brought up a few, like a lot of different good points along the way. So for you guys listening, rewind and go back and listen because it's what Elizabeth is saying is also a big argument that you guys probably hear me share a lot about for advertising because you post something, you work hard to create it, and it gets a few hundred views, and you can't actually measure that tangibly to know if that's actually effective or not in the grand scheme of things, just because the distribution was too poor. When you're podcast guesting, and this from my own personal experience, you get to also do very catered targeting. right? Back in the days with Facebook advertising, we were able to like hone in a laser target to our exact ideal client. And along the way, through different laws and regulations and whatnot, that wavered along the way. So right now with advertising, we get to basically see how well does a piece of content do versus organically. Similarly, when you are guesting, I believe from my own experience too, you do get the opportunity to see how well these conversations play out because they're going in front of a very specific and catered audience. And I've shared, Elizabeth, that a few of you, if you are past clients who came and found me from a podcast, or those who've been on here, like when I first started a business and I wasn't advertising on my own and I was doing organic content. I came across that there were certain organic things that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. It's like it was just my hand is hurting, I'm squeezing, not really getting a whole lot. And there were things that were it took a little bit more effort, it took more time, took more planning, and podcasting being one of them. But the juice, the fruit that came from it was just so much better. And it's really, really important. So rewind and listen to that again, because if you're thinking about it, if you've been having that itch and you're wondering and you know that, hey, you know what? You like having great conversations. You're not trying to preach or anything, and you're really just trying to build a connection. Is a really, really great opportunity. Um, so I think most of us listening could pretty much kind of say, okay, I can understand, a podcast is one of the number one growing sectors in online coaching business across the world in general. More and more people are getting into it, listening to it. Um, right. So, but they're like, hey, I understand podcast guesting could work, but I have no idea which podcast I should actually be trying to get on. Like, how should a business owner that's like right now, maybe they're a new coach a few months in and they're feeling what we're talking about, how would they identify the right ones? Like, is it the size, the niche, the audience, the host? Like, what are some things that they should be looking for?
You know what? If it's someone who's just starting out, that's not anything that I would even like, not the size. The niche absolutely is super important because you want to have a conversation with the right audience listening. But that's probably the only thing I would pay attention to. One of the best places to get started is social media, right? That's where a lot of us turn to when we know us and our family and we want to get the word out for our businesses. It's the same there too. There's a lot of podcasts that are coming out starting every day, and they are looking for guests that have expertise in the field that you are in and that you already know very much about. So they very much want you on their show. And so it's really easy to find if you are looking at for groups on Facebook specifically, find a guest, be a guest type groups. If you look for any kind of keywords in the title of those groups like that, those are going to be a great place for an exchange to either find guests to be on your podcast or to become a guest on a podcast. And they tell you exactly what they're looking for on those posts. So they can say, I'm looking for experts to speak on these topics. These are the conversations that we're built around. And you can start off because they're usually smaller. But what I want to say, it doesn't the smaller audiences are sometimes better because those small audiences are built already. These are their super fans, right? If you think about
Hmm.
it, like
Yeah.
these are their family members who are huge supporters of the person who's listening all the time. They know them really well. They've either worked with them very closely. So there's a huge amount of trust that's already been built in that small audience space,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And if you're just starting as a guest too, that's the best place to start. Go get your reps in somewhere where it's not a huge audience, where if you mess up, it's okay. You get to go experience it. But Facebook groups are a great place to get started. That's where I got started personally and how I started just looking for podcasts to be on. And then, after you get those reps in and you start finding what it is that you want to talk about, and you're like, okay, now I'm starting to get some traction here. I want to look for something bigger and better. Then there are ways of doing that as well.
Gotcha. I'm glad you answered. You actually answered two of my questions in there, which is also like how to identify, like once you identify those podcasts, how to go about getting booked, and like they tell you, right? Like it's when I post in guest collaboration groups, I lay out exactly what I'm looking for, and anyone that applies for it, and if they put exactly those things, those are the ones who get the spot without having to doing anything else because I'll do a post like that and I'll have 40, 50 applications come through and it can be a little bit
Hmm.
overwhelming sometimes. So like really looking and seeing like what is being asked for, provide that information. Because again, like I'm not going to post that because if I'm not looking for guests, I am looking for guests and I do want to have good quality guests. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Um, so one of the things I found really interesting that you're talking about is that podcast guesting it didn't just like give you it didn't just give you exposure, like it really just made you better at communicating your expertise. And I guess like we're sitting right now talking, and anyone who's listening, they could probably agree with that you communicate very well. You're able to articulate the reasons why we're doing this, right? And I could only assume that's been something that's been just built up from continuously being a guest on different shows. If we listen to your
Absolutely.
first episode compared to the 30th, the 40th, the 50th, we could probably see a big transition and a transformation that really just happens along the way. So, from your perspective, and you've been doing this, right? So, like, why does talking about what you do in a conversation help, like, help people to get clear on their message? And I'm talking about the actual person, like
Okay.
just being able to talk about what you do in a conversation, like how that has been helping you to get clearer on your own message.
Oh man, I love this question because there's two different things that actually are happening. And you have to, there's two steps to this too, right? So you get to go be a guest on someone's podcast. You get to have this amazing conversation, which I wanted to add to when you meet someone through like a Facebook group or something like that, you get to be human. You're not always like, it's not always like a formal application. You're just like waiting to hear back. You're a human. You're like, hey, this feels so aligned. Can we connect and see if this is a good fit and then just continue to have this great connection, right? And conversation.
Mhm.
Um, so the first part of it is getting to have that conversation. And if we're looking for validation within ourselves around what it is that we are an expert at, you get that through having conversations with someone by their cues, right? So they have
Mhm.
like we nod, we're agreeing, like you get to see the cues that you're not getting if you don't get to sit in front of someone and actually help them through the process that you know
I'm
so
so
much
happy you mentioned
about.
that.
Yes. And so that's a huge part of it. And so you get to have the conversation, you get to say it. The next part of it, though, which is so important and where the change comes for us and that confidence comes from for us, is going back and listening to that podcast. It happens when 2 weeks, a month out after, depending on how busy the editor is and when that podcast actually goes live, go listen to it when it goes live and listen to you and hear
Hmm.
you, because that's where I think that confidence comes from too, in that shift in ourselves, because then we are like, well, heck yeah, I know what I'm talking about. I sounded really good on that. I really do know what I'm saying. And so there's so much that happens internally, scientifically too, when we get to hear ourselves say things that bring us so much joy. And you're like, I just validated so many things. I got the validation from having the conversation. I got to say it. I got to hear myself say it, and I found what I loved about it and what I didn't love about it, what I liked talking about maybe and what I didn't. Um, and you can kind of tweak it and go from there. And it's such a fun, if you love to have conversations, this is seriously a fun thing. This is not work. Like it's
Yeah.
exciting,
Yeah,
enjoyable.
it really is. And
Hmm.
I was like I said, I was really glad you touched on this, especially the validation piece, because there's so much of us, and like I can speak for myself, but like there was a point when I first started that claiming the title of an expert was like, ooh, where do I touch that? Do I not touch that? And there's so much of us that we, overthink our answers, undersell what we know, just don't really feel 100% comfortable talking about ourselves, our skills, our abilities, our experience in that way. And being a guest, being able to be validated by somebody else really allows that. And I've said at the beginning, like I'm an expert when it comes to advertising, expert when it comes to podcasting. You nod, you agree with it. And it takes
Hmm.
a certain level of confidence to get there. So you can see that really when you step into this, what happens is you start building that confidence, you start realizing that you are an expert. You get validated, it becomes your truth, and it's no longer something where it's like, am I making something up? Am I being someone that I'm not? And it really just starts putting you fully in alignment. You start noticing the conversations you have on sales calls, when you have a new prospect, all these things start evolving into better and
Yes.
better. It's like, wait a minute, like the past 10 conversations that I've had led into 5 or 6 calls, where in the past it was just maybe one or two. And all these things start improving because what's happening now is that there's just a massive building of confidence, building of expertise and just the ownership of like, wait a minute, I am a badass. I am. Hell yeah. And
Yes.
when that's one thing I love of entrepreneurship when we all step into that. And it's like, yeah, the
Yes.
money helps to validate that too as well. We get those validations from the yeses, and it's all those stepping stone. And for those who've been coaches for a while, who've done marketing for a while, and realizing, you know what, I want to do things a little different. I'm tired of the organic. I'm tired of just chasing DMs or chasing groups in a way, and I want to do something a little different. Podcasting
Yeah.
is also a great way because you already have so much tools under your belt and you
Yes.
have an expertise under your belt. This is also another fantastic opportunity. So, Elizabeth, for someone who's already been established, do you say there's a difference for someone who's getting started now, or like is there an opportunity for them that they've not done podcasting, they're already an established coach, entrepreneur, and they're looking to get into it now? What would you say to someone like that?
I think it's exactly the same because there is the growth is going to happen, especially if it's in the coaching realm, right? If this is anytime we shift or move into a space that's unknown for us or new for us, there is a new level that's unlocked in our confidence and how we just go about moving in the world, right? So if we can nail down having really good conversations, that's only going to improve our business. But then we've already talked about all the benefits that come from podcasting. I mean, you get to market yourself in different ways. You get to experience other people. It builds community. You're networking. This is one of the best ways to network. Wouldn't have met some of the most amazing people that I have in my community now if it weren't for podcasting. And I consider a lot of these people really good friends, honestly, because you get to have these really cool conversations with them and they keep going beyond hitting record and stopping the recording, right? Like we keep in touch. We're genuinely invested in each other now, and these people want to see you grow and continue to grow. So it does so much for you, no matter where you are in your business. And I think the earlier you can start doing it, the better, because you will. I think this is an overused term, but I love it because it's a really big shift, and that's like a quantum leap, right? We've all heard how you can quantum leap from like one place in your business to another, and I truthfully feel that podcasting is a way to do that, because you go from, maybe if you say you have like 1,000 followers on Facebook, um, and you're posting and you only, 1 to 2%, if you're lucky, of the
Right.
people that are following you or friends with you get to see your content that you're putting out there organically. This is all organically speaking, no paid ads. And then you go and you get to be on a podcast where who knows how many listeners, and then you share the podcast, people in your community want to hear it. I mean, like I said, it comes full circle. It is such a like cool thing to do, and I don't think it matters where you are in your business. If you're ready to start talking or experimenting with talking, or speaking and having a conversation, connecting with someone, then that's when it's time to start trying to podcast guests. And if you aren't sure about that, one of the things that we do in my program, is practice pods. And so if you're that person who does overthink and you're like, no, I really want to do this, and you sign up and then you cancel because you're like, I can't do it. I haven't done it before. This is scary. There's something for you too in this program. You can sign up for as many practice pods as you want. I'll practice with you. I'll show you how to do the content and get whatever you can from that conversation, even if you feel like it was a flop, which it won't. It won't be. It's never as scary as you think it's going to be. Um, but there's so much that you can get out of those conversations, even if they're not live, if they don't ever go live, you can still be collecting some assets from what you're doing with those. But
Right.
yeah, yeah, I feel like I'm going on a separate tangent now, but
No.
yes, practice also is super important for anyone who is nervous about trying it.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, the thing is, it's like what you're describing is that that one piece of content can be split up and pushed out in so many different ways that, whereas one piece of content may get a 1-2% view, a podcast that is being distributed in clips that's being shared continuously more than just once, what ends up happening is you get a larger piece of that pie, a
Hmm.
larger distribution. And not only that, it's also being pushed to a very specific catered audience and niche. So even if there is a 5% of somebody else's audience to see it, that's a 5% of ideal client niche that's seeing it. It's not like it's a random spread of a random hashtag that we don't exactly know who's even seeing it. It's very
Exactly.
catered. It's very catered. So we can dive into this and discuss this a lot. I know like you have an offer that you can be able to help others where if they're been just doing this for a while, like it's getting started, whatever the case is, but they're just like really just not sure how to go about it. They're not confident in the conversation, but just want a little bit of hand holding and they know that this is a route that they want to go and they want to avoid some of the biggest mistakes that other business owners um ends up start doing when it comes to starting to be a podcast guest. Tell us a little bit more about what you have going on and how someone can even get a hold of you to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already mentioned Podready a lot, and it is such a cool program because it's start to finish and it's personalized according to what you need. But I'm basically handing over all the tools that I've built since I started podcasting and as a host and as a guest to really give like a well-rounded experience of what it's like to get into podcasting and then go out into the world and actually start doing it. I give you step-by-step instructions on where to go to start podcasting, all of those things. And if you do need a little bit of hand holding, I am there to practice with you, and even take you through all those steps. And I mean, we can go from being super formal with the media kit and all of those things to just having a conversation with someone online that you see, like I said, through Facebook or somewhere like that, and how you actually approach those conversations from like a more human perspective and hop on a show and have a conversation with someone that does go live. So there's a lot that's happening in the community. We have some people that are moving through that now, and it's just so cool to see what they're doing. And I think that, I could go on and on about that all day, but the best way to get a hold of me right now is on the socials. So Facebook, I'm Elizabeth Grandinetti on there, and then Instagram, Coach_Elizabeth G, and in those two places, those are the best places to hop on and just send me a quick DM, and we can talk more about Podready and what's happening in that community.
Gotcha. I'll drop Elizabeth's links below, the video and the notes and wherever you're catching this, there's gonna be a link. So just look for it. If you don't see it, look again because it's there. I promise you, it's gonna be there. We drop the links everywhere. So a half hour flies by so fast. I do these interviews and
It
it goes
does.
by so quick before we know it. It's been such a good conversation. I think the biggest takeaway is that podcast guesting or even if you have your own podcast, it's not just about getting your name in front of more people. It's really about the everything that comes and happens with it, right? The ability to be able to talk about your work more clearly, build the confidence, being able to be comfortable and be seen as expert, even taking on the title of, wait a minute, I am an expert. And Elizabeth, you talked on this so much, it's just relationships, the relationships. Often in entrepreneurship, the success we have is a matter of our network. And these is a
Mhm.
way of this podcasting being a guest is a fantastic way of building a network because some of the collaborations I've done, have turned into clients years later. And it's something that no one counts. Sometimes we don't sit there and track. I had a conversation back in 2023. In 2026, someone books a call and says something 3 years later. But these are all part of the network building, putting yourself out there and claiming it all. So I really love this conversation. And for anybody listening who again wants to become intentional about podcast guesting, intentional about growing their business, intentional about doing it a little different than you have over the past, if you're looking to do things a little different, connect with Elizabeth, follow her on social, send her a DM, even if you're just like not, if you're not pod ready yet, just connect her and be like, hey, I heard your conversation with Arfan, and I just want to say, hey, thank you so much.
Yes.
Connect,
Yes.
it's all about the collaboration and connection. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up today, Elizabeth?
Oh, no, I love that so much. And I love that. Yes, please reach out. I won't try to sell you Pod Ready, even though it's the most exciting thing that I've been involved in to date. So I get excited about it, but I won't push it on you. And I would also love to do a practice pod with you. Like if you are even just considering it and you just want to dip a toe, we can schedule a practice session where you get to record it and I can show you a little bit about what's happening and what can happen and come from those conversations. I would love to do that. But it's really cool. And I just want to thank you so much, Arfan, for having me on your show today because this has been a blast. And, hopefully we can do it again.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. There you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe to the channel, and share this with somebody. I know you know someone who's talked to you about podcasting, has mentioned a podcast, or have just tossed it into your world somehow. Don't take it by chance. Share this conversation with them. You never know what kind of food it will bring. And with that being said, I'll catch you on the next episode. See y'all later, everyone. Bye.